just want to take this opportunity to, obviously I'm available to the players and coaches, and I've been very thankful, for, their efforts and what they've had to do, during this obviously pandemic and virtual. I just wanted to take this moment to say, hey, I appreciate, everything that you guys have done to try to, make sure that, people understand from a fan standpoint everything that's going on in the program. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of things going on, from today until we start. And like I told Tad, I said, I encourage you to reach out to Tad, and we'll get that information out. And if I need to be available and it works in my schedule, I have no problem doing that. So I appreciate everybody's efforts during these tough times.
Thanks, Coach. We'll start off with Demetrius.
Hey, Coach, I appreciate you doing this every week. Hope you're doing well. With the offseason program kind of wrapped up or about to wrap up, how do you feel your players did in terms of the progress they made? And do you have any players in particular who stood out to you, or someone who went above and beyond what they were asked to do?
I think, first of all, there's a couple of things that I felt some anxiety about early on, just from how it was all going to work, how everything was going to be connected, and how was the communication, how was the visual, how was a lot of things were going through my mind at the beginning. And like I said before, our IT department, our video department, did a great job of making sure we had access, to be able to do, what we felt we needed to do to help the players during, obviously, restrictions. I think for the most part, a lot of times, when you have a young football team like we have, the other part of the anxiety I had was, kind of, level of frustration, what I'm saying, of whether it be being stuck in your home, or the video not working well, or maybe the audio not doing well, or maybe you're not in the right chat room, or at the time. And I think the thing I was probably most impressed with was being able to say, hey, look, everybody take a step back, take a breath, we'll figure this thing out, we'll figure it out as we go. And we really didn't have any glitches. So the patience overall from everyone, I really thought was outstanding in an industry or a business where, there's not a lot of patience. Everyone wants results, right away. I think that as far as did anyone stand out or anything, I would say, there's an expectation level that of the players that you've been around. I think some of the things that have stood out to me was, the way our, the free agents that we signed, from other teams, how quickly they've adapted and really worked hard, to come in, because you really don't know those players as well as the ones you're around every day. And then I think, I'm really excited about this young group of players that we have. You have about 30 rookies and first-year players. And I would say probably, that's the one where, if I looked at, I'd say, wow, these guys really have been impressive of, the amount of work they put in, outside of, the meetings and the watching tape and, trying to make sure they have a good understanding. But I think, a long time ago, I probably told you guys this story. My first year at the New York Jets, I think I was the youngest offensive line coach at the time, and I really didn't know anyone at the Jets. So I went through an interview process, and they kind of had a guy that was, he became a mentor to me, who was a really great man, but he was kind of in the room, kind of making sure I didn't screw up, or say something, or mess things up, or not teach things the right way. His name is Jimmy Ray, and I know I've talked about him before. Some of you guys may know. He's been in the league forever. I really look up to him as a person, and and obviously football-wise, and we talk, quite often. So as it was my first individual meeting, and I got the project. I got I'm there's an anxiety. I got a veteran group of people. I want to put on. I want to put a great presentation on. So I go through it. We're in an hour meeting. I got the offensive line. I got Hall of Famer Kevin Wise in there. I got a bunch of other great players. And I'll never forget, the players leave. I looked at Jimmy. I said, well, "What do you think?" He goes, "Well, we'll find out in about 30 minutes when they take the practice field." Meaning that, I've learned a long time ago that you can feel like you've communicated well, the players have communicated well, but I really think, the result of everything is going to be, transforming to what we do on the field. Thank you for that question, Demetrius.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Demetrius. We'll go to John Shipley and then Mark Long.
Hey, Coach. Thanks again for doing this. I hope you and the family are doing well. I know, the virtual offseason, it was a big adjustment period for, everybody, players, but also for the coaches and your coaching staff. Just what were your takeaways on how your coaching staff handled this kind of offseason?
It was good. I mean, I think what helped us early on, we were able to be together, before we actually wound up splitting apart. I think that was important. I think if that didn't occur, I think it would have been, some real challenging issues, that you go through when you put people together. I think from a standpoint of virtual, you get a lot of questions of, what have you been able to do? Well, we really have been able to do everything, that we needed to do to get done, except for, the stuff that's, on the field, and working with the players on the field and going through those evaluations. So, we're trying to, look at ways, which I'm working on right now, to speed up that process of all those reps. When you think about it, I think about it as, all the reps that you've missed. Now, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10%, maybe 5% of our football team, will be able to catch up, quickly. The veteran guys that have been doing it for a while, that are comfortable with the system, I think have a good opportunity. But these younger players, they've missed reps. So, we're trying to see, how we can introduce ways of in our practice schedule when we start, of really trying to catch up, on those reps, for the younger guys, so that they have a chance to be able to compete for a job. And I think, we're still getting a lot of information out. This is the first time that I haven't, handed out, the whole schedule for training camp. Normally when our players leave, I have the whole training camp done. I'm talking about, the scripts of all the practices, or the shells of all the practices, all the daily schedules. Basically right now is I have some shells, but the daily schedules, we're still working with it. We had I received a memo that came out that, hey, listen, there's some procedures that we have in place, the NFL, the NFLPA, health advisors, there's all these people that are involved that, are creating these procedures or protocols for us that, obviously we need, to keep everyone safe. So implementing them, with the facilities that we have, those are the things that I'm going through right now, trying to get this schedule that's the safest way, for us when we do return.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks, Shipley. We'll go to Mark Long and then D-Rock.
Hey, Doug, how are you?
Mark.
So you introduced Shad on Wednesday, apparently, and he had his meeting a week after his pretty powerful op-ed. I'm just curious, what was your take out of Wednesday's meeting with players, staff, coaches, and what kind of ideas came out of that?
Yeah, I think that, we all know Marrone's track record and how, he's been with our players. And I think that, he's been able to meet with players in the past individually, and he's been around the team quite a bit. I would say, more so in 2000, last year, 2019, and now than at least in my past. And I think it's, we appreciate that. We understand that, he has a lot of things going on, not just Jacksonville, but he has made it a priority for himself, to really get a feel and understanding. I think that, him taking part in that meeting is really, really part to the course of how he's done and things that he's done in the past, and he's a person that's going to come in. There was a lot of thought. It was a players platform and assistant coaches platform. Obviously, I have access to him quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure the players that didn't have that same type of access were able to get it. I thought, there was great conversations. There were, things that came up that, we're working on. I want to see where it goes first. We have a couple of, action plans set in place. We have projects to do. I told the team, really, one of my, I told them what my expectations were, from when, that meeting ended yesterday with the veteran players. And I told them, our number one priority is that we, sustain, ourselves in this movement. So I talked to Marcus Pollard. We're building some things into our schedule over the summer. We'll be able to have these discussions. I didn't want to stop them, and then all of a sudden they start, when we report. I think this needs to be ongoing. I think we need to be progressing, until we always come back. And then I think when we actually start, I'm actually looking at ways to, and I told the players this, to put things in our schedule, where it's not at the end of the day, where it's, everybody's tired and everyone's beat up a little bit and it's voluntary. I'm trying to build some time during the day where, we're going to be able to discuss these things because, I don't think that this is, something from an adversity standpoint that may end. I mean, we have, an election year coming on. I think there's going to be a lot going on. And I want to make sure that, we as a team have the forum where it's open, where people can express their, feelings or how they feel. And, we can listen and be able to support them. I think those are what my expectations are. So I think you'll see things down the road, Mark, things that are going to come out. Right now, we're in the stages of really ideas we've taken those ideas, we put them into action plans, and now those action plans are actually, since that meeting have started. And I think when they get to a point where we're able to say, hey, this is what, we're doing, and we feel that we can make change in those areas, I think those things will come out. I know they'll come out.
Thanks, Mark. We'll head over to Michael's iPhone. If his iPhone is working.
Hello, Doug.
Yes.
Hello. Oh, sorry about that.
You're fine.
When did you guys make the decision to go to more 3-4 concepts on defense, or, to use that maybe more heavily than you have in the past? Was that prior to the draft? Was that after last season? What was it that kind of spurred the change?
Well, I think one is, we want to, make sure that we know systematically we're based out of a 4-down lineman scheme, but we wanted to be able to increase our multiplicity and our front mechanics, meaning that, there's a lot of different things that you can do in the back end, coverage-wise. There's a lot of disguising. There's a lot of things that we can do just to, maybe create that moment of indecision of, whether we're pressing and bailing or whether we're pressing and going to cover 2. There's a lot of things you can do, and it's so much easier to be multiple in your coverage aspects. Sometimes your front mechanics, because a lot of times front mechanics you can get caught up looking for certain players to do certain things. I think when you look at our football team and you look at players like Josh Allen, you look at Yannick, you look at Cassius Marsh, you look at these players that we've acquired or have on our football team. They give us some great flexibility of, being able to put their hand in the ground or be able to stand up. And I think that from a standpoint of an offensive point of view, I think that can create some challenges. I think, you see most teams will base out of one front, but, every time you go into it, except for maybe goal line, which some teams will play the two fronts, pretty much you're locked in. Other than that, there's going to be some form of an over and under shift. There's going to be some form of 3-down spacing, not all the time, but pretty much most teams, and you've got to be able to do that, because you don't, for me as an offensive line coach, if I know the front that I'm going against, and I can dictate that front and that one scheme without dictating a design play to check to, then that weekend we're going to get a ton of reps on that stuff. But if I go to a personnel grouping and they're locked in and I've got to block 3 or 4 different fronts, well, it could potentially limit me, to the plays that I'm going to be putting in that game plan. Because obviously some of the spacing of some of the front mechanics, you feel like you might have some leverage on some of those plays depending on what they're playing behind it secondary wise. So from a standpoint of being multiple, it's good. I think it's good. It creates an anxiety, and I think it's good for us to practice against, because the teams we play are very multiple in what they do front wise. So I don't know if it's here we go. We had snaps of it last year. Usually that type of spacing occurs in base personnel. We've looked at it in some of the 3rd down packaging, but we played snaps of it last year, and we want to make sure that, depending on how some teams play us, that we have the ability to play that front if it gives us an advantage. And we feel like we have some guys that can really be really good football players and get great production out of them in some of those positions.
Yeah, Todd has been pretty adamant in the past that he's a 4-3 guy. So how amenable was he to the change, and how quickly do you think he's going to enjoy it?
No, I think he enjoys it. I think what happens to us as coaches, Mike, is that, it's kind of like for me, I grew up and learned, the 3-digit system. Okay. So that was a system of offense that I learned. Okay. Then when I went to the NFL, it was the first time really that I learned the West Coast system. So, it's funny. It's like, when people say, what do you believe in? And I say, I believe in West Coast. Well, they say, well, you believe in the short passing game. Wait a minute. I believe in the West Coast principles of how we teach. But, I've also want to be part of a vertical passing game. That's a big part of, what we did when I was in New Orleans. So I think a lot of times people want to label you, and put you in this pigeonhole. Whereas the stem of the teaching for me is West Coast principles, but that doesn't mean we're locked in. To give you an example, we were the only team, I think, in 2002 when I was with the New York Jets, that we were the last team probably to go into the shotgun, because we were pure West Coast principles and there were some advantages of obviously going into shotgun, but, we stuck to those principles that worked for us and it was fine. But I think what you're seeing now is everyone has a base to how they want to teach, and you see everyone evolving to either plays that are going to be putting people in space that are going to help the players, or catering to the players' strengths of what you have around you and what you're able to do. And I think those are the things that are important. And the thing that probably gets left a little bit out there is that once you have these players, that you feel like, hey, I can match them up, I can do this with, you're going to spend time on that. But if one of those players gets hurt, well, then that time spent on that with the other 10 players, is out the door. So you got to have a balance to yourself on what you want to do.
Thanks, D-Rock. We'll go to Gary Smits and then Gene.
Hey, Doug. How you doing?
Good.
Doug, I'd like to reflect a little bit on the events of the past week and your players and then the organization, the change that they were able to affect with last Friday and then Leonard's March, change that it's been, decades in the making, I guess, in this town. What level of pride do you have right now in those players in this organization and what they were able to do in the past week?
Yeah, I mean, you're cutting in and out. You wanna help me with that?
Yeah, I think over the last week, what was accomplished from Friday, Tuesday with Leonard, just your reflection over the change that's been able to be affected by the organization.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, being and I've said this to the team, being a white male, living in this country, I can never say to myself or understand what it's like, for them to grow up as a black male or raise a family. There's things that I've never really even thought of. So for me, it's been a lot of reflection of listening, learning a lot, going through a lot of emotion. I think this is different, from anything that has happened in my lifetime. I've seen starts of this, but I've seen them stop. I haven't, or fade is a better way to put it. And I think now there's a chance, there's a moment, and obviously with the murder of George Floyd, that has sparked an activism that can create change. And I think that our players have done an outstanding job of being aware of how to create change, and we're all constantly learning of what we can do and how we can do it, and how do we use our platform as an NFL organization, or being an NFL player, or being part of it, and that's my biggest thing, is that I've got to look at how does the platform of the head coach go into this. And that's what I said before about making sure that because you express your opinions is not going to it's not going to dictate whether you make this team or not. Your ability of whether you play football can. I've said that, David said that, and that's obviously something that Shot agrees with. So we want to make sure our players understand that as we go forward, so we can free this up. We can have great thoughts, great ideas, where people don't feel like they're going to be punished because of those thoughts or ideas from a standpoint of the league. So those things have I think ability is the one thing that is echoed through everybody, through assistant coaches, myself, the players. That's the one thing that, we want to make sure that we can do. I think you'll see, I've told the players, you'll see things that we do as an organization, but I told the players and challenged them that if they do stuff, anything on their own in their local communities and local neighborhoods, to please contact Tad, so we can get that out there. Because I think that, even though we may want to do things as a team, as a group, I really feel strongly that a lot of our players want to do things in their own town, and it's important to them. And if it's important to them, I want to support them, to do it. So I think we're going to see, these things come out. We're going to see, how things progress. And I think we'll be able to point our finger, at a couple of things and say, hey, this is where we move the needle or moving the needle. And I think you hear a lot of terms of, hey, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's, we've got to stay in tune to this. We've got to, keep this, movement going and sustain it. And, it's never going to end until we do have, racial equality. I mean, that's going to take, I would think some time, but at least we've gotten off to a pretty good start. I think from the standpoint of where we are as an organization, I couldn't be more proud of the players, the coaches, ownership, the business side of the buildings involved in this too. We're getting everybody involved. We want everyone in our organization to have a voice, to be able to, express what they believe and express their opinions without, thought of repercussions.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Gary. We'll go to Gene and then Cole.
Hey, Doug. I was just curious, with a little bit of downtime coming up here, probably mostly in the month of July, how is this year going to be different in any way in terms of being able to really get away and allow yourself to decompress before whenever training camp actually starts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you ask my family, they look at it the opposite way. They're looking like, when are you going back into the office? Trying to get me out of the house. And I think, in the other way, you're like, okay, listen, let's make sure that we have everything created that we need, that we can communicate freely, whatever adversity or challenges we get affected as a team. I mean, I told the team, already, obviously this is an election year. There'll be things that come up, that we're going to have to be able to talk about as a team, because, managing, our all of us, managing our personal lives and our beliefs and what we, is an important part of what we do as coaches. To ignore something or to be silent about it and to think it's not going to affect, your job or what you do is pretty ignorant. You know what I'm saying? I really, that's my belief. I think what's hard for me, Gene, right now, the anxiety that I have is really trying to get these schedules done. So for me, even though I may, take a day or do something, I got to keep my mind active, because, I'm really concerned of how I'm going to, adjust all these schedules and do that. And that relies just on me. So the reason why is because I'm taking information from the weight room, the training room, the equipment room. There's a lot of moving parts operationally that go on with a football team when they're in the building. I think you guys just see, the outside stuff of just the practice. So, we're going to be looking at things virtually. We may have virtual meetings, what I'm saying? I talked to the team about that. We've done such a good job with that. I mean, we might be 70 feet from each other, but it may be virtual, So I think, and then plus I'm still, waiting for, the procedures and the protocols that are coming out, and they're starting to come out, but, everyone wants to make sure that we get this thing right. And I think, other sports are starting to open up, and, we'll probably, make sure we're evaluating that and looking at that as we go forward. So, for me, it'll be more of a unique off season because of the challenges that we've just had, whether it be the pandemic or social injustice, and how it affects our scheduling, how we want to put things in. So this has been a unique year, to say the least, but it's very challenging. So I don't think of this off season as much as, hey, we've been grinding and decompress. I think it's an off season of, creating an environment schedule, that's obviously produces, player safety first, coaches safety, the people around. We have about, to give you an idea of the scale, we have about 191 people involved. That's with the players. What I'm saying? I'm talking about support staff and everyone, that is going to be around the team. So, like, I have a list of everybody in every department, and then seeing how they mesh with our team and what they do with our team is a challenging part. And I think there may be things that come up, obviously, in the next couple of weeks that, you got to be ready for. And I think that the one thing that I do not worry about is, the team and the players and the coaches, being able to adjust. I think, in the beginning, you get a lot of people that are, all they're worried about is their own little, world of, hey, I'm just worried about the equipment room. I'm just worried about the training room. I'm just worried about the weight room. I'm just worried about our hydration procedures, or how we're going to feed the players. So you get all these things, and when you get what's best for them, okay, might not be best for everybody else. Whereas now I have to take all this information, work with those people to try to get the best environment. So I would say this year, this off season is truly unique, and it will be a lot more operational work than obviously the X's and O's or the decompression that you mentioned.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gene. We'll go to Cole and then Shipley.
Hey, Doug. You were talking about your pride in what the organization has done with the protest marches and so forth. I just wonder what you think the impact of that's going to be going forward, and if you think that because the team has been a little more out there together publicly with this stuff, that it'll have a positive impact on how the team deals with each other in the locker room once some adversity comes during the season.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. We're doing, the things that we're part of, these, humanitarian rights, or, just being a human being. That's what we're doing. I'm not sitting here trying to create something that's going to be able to, I guess I'm trying to look for a word. I'm not trying to, hey, get one thing and get something else out of something else. I'm just trying to do what's right, and I think it's, I know I personally learned a lot, these past couple of years, a lot of my discussions with the players, and, I think, and try to keep them on task, of what they want to do for movement wise. And I really believe that we can do some great things, but, it's not going to just be, the players and the coaches and the building or the organization. It's going to take a lot from people on the outside too. There's no doubt about that. So, I look forward to, all these, discussions and where they're leading and bringing people that have the ability to make change, involved in them, and, seeing where we can, have some really good inroads. I think that the discussions that we've had have shown me that our players, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't putting, one against the other, saying, hey, if I do this job here, this is going to carry over. I don't know that. And that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because we feel it's the right thing. And, it's important for our players, and it's important that, in this time, that we don't have the same amount of time on this type of platform. It's difficult to maintain a long career in this league. It's difficult to maintain a career as an assistant coach or a coach. But there are people in our communities that, have the ability to sustain things for a long time in our country, in our politics, in the NFL with just ownership. They're going to be, obviously around a lot longer than us. So, if we can spark these conversations and get people to just listen, and then obviously put support around it, then I think you have that ability. I think we just have to wait and see. But we're going to do everything we can to keep this sustainable and to keep pushing it and to keep having these uncomfortable conversations.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Coach. We'll wrap up with John Shipley.
Hey, Coach. I just wanted to ask, I saw the team announced earlier today about hiring a couple of former players, including former running back Denard Robinson. I just wanted to really get your thoughts on hiring him and really what he can bring to the staff as a quality control coach.
Well, we had two hires, and I'll talk about, if it's okay, I'll talk about Tony first and then Denard. These were Tony's hire was in the works early on after the season. So Tony Gilbert's a guy that, I was fortunate enough to been around him. I wouldn't say that I knew him particularly well. I was the offensive line coach at Georgia. He was on the defensive side. But, I remember a lot of the players, and we've had a lot of good players on that side, really on our team. I just remember, how much respect I had for Tony as a hard worker and, intelligent and team and leadership. And I just, I think there's a lot of players that I'm around that I don't get to know on a real personal level, but I appreciate, what I'm saying, as a coach and working. So I've been tracking Tony for a while. We went and played in the league for a while. I think, I obviously played here at Jacksonville. He actually played Joe D on special teams and played linebacker and then really tried to work his way in. He started, I'm a firm believer in, trying to work your way up. That's what I believe in. He started out in junior college and, was able to get on at UCF and help them with the linebackers. So, I really felt really good about, getting Tony on board here and he's excited to come and he's been great. So this has been going on, for a while. We had to hold off on something because of obviously the pandemic. We were out of the office and, for lack of a better term, we were just kind of, hitting the brakes on everything just to see where everything was going. And then with Denard, the NFL ownership, it started a fellowship where, they wanted to, bring in people on the offensive side of the ball. And Denard, it was the same thing. I mean, he went out and he went here locally at JU and, unfortunately, they dropped football. But I really think that, he has a great skill set as far as knowledge of a guy that, has played quarterback, running back, receiver. He can do a lot of different things. His knowledge of those positions and, his ability to learn and willing to learn and keep that going up and really, put him in a position, of leadership down the road. So, we feel really fortunate, to have him. And I think, it's important. I think, a lot of times it's easy to go up there and I've always said this, and this happened early in my career, when a lot of times we as coaches, I'd get up there and I never ever wanted to ever say, hey, this is easy. Nothing's easy, what we do in this league as far as what's on the field. And as a coach, it's always a challenge, but players don't want to hear that. You know what I'm saying? Hey, they want to know how to do it to the best of their, ability and be able to get things done. So I've always thought that if you played and you started coaching at these lower levels, and it's only through my experience, you have all this information, but you're trying to find out, your technique or your method or how you want to do things. And, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, I can tell you, I made countless mistakes, at Cortland State, at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, at Northeastern. And I think, when I look back, and I've said this publicly before, if I would have made those mistakes and it just started in the NFL, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, I think these guys have put in the work. I think they have a good foundation. I think they have a great sense of, the problem that I've always had with the NFL is that when you do this hiring, a lot of times people, once they get a logo, whether it's a team logo or the NFL logo, they automatically think that they're the greatest coaches or the best coaches in the world. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Now, we do have great coaches in this league, but there's great coaches in high school. There's great coaches in Division III, 1AA, and I've always believed that. And I think that the one thing that I always felt when you had to come up and you had to water the field, you had to clean laundry, you had to line the field, you had all these different responsibilities because you didn't have a support staff. You had to set up your own drills. As you progress in your career, you get one shirt for recruiting, you know what I'm saying? You got a gas card, you don't have a per diem. I mean, there's a lot of stories that are out there, but I think as you progress and do a good job, when things are I don't want to say handed to you, but when there's opportunities where, hey, here's 4 shirts, here's 3 pairs of workout shoes, here's, this type of travel, that type of travel, here's a per diem, you appreciate them, you don't feel entitled to them. And, that's the one thing that I've always looked for is that, coaches that, feel like, they're going to come because they're going to do a great job, for our players and our coaches and help us win.
Jaguars.